Welcome to Deep Dive Down Under, a podcast that delves into inspiring stories from individuals with big hearts, bold visions, and profound purpose. Storytelling lies at the heart of human culture. For tens of thousands of years, Australian Indigenous communities, like many traditional cultures, have shared wisdom through stories. Long before written words, these stories taught children about their culture, environment, and law, passing down timeless lessons for generations to come. Each of us carries a story, a journey of growth, resilience, and inspiration. Within these journeys lie seeds of wisdom planted by mentors or nurtured through personal discovery, shaping the lives now led. Join us as we explore the world through the eyes of others. Their powerful stories invite us to expand our horizons, find inspiration, and connect more deeply with humanity. Whether you're seeking a spark of motivation or a moment of reflection, this podcast offers a space to listen, learn, and hear the whispers of your own soul. We take a moment to honour the traditional owners of the land we live on. We pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging, acknowledging their wisdom and stewardship of this beautiful country.
Hi.
Hello, welcome to the podcast Deep Dive Down Under, and thank you for being part of it. I actually created this podcast motivated to capture your story.
Oh, wow.
Your story is very interesting to me, and I wanted to capture your wisdom before you ascend.
Oh.
Given the fact you're 86.
Before I go nuts, like older people do.
But I know you're reversing the aging process, but I did want to capture your story before the ascension occurs.
Okay, I'm honoured.
And I've spent about 15 years with you, I think. So
yeah, it's been that long.
Yeah. So
wow.
Or around about.
That's where you get old and I become ancient.
So I think that our connection began because I met one of your students at a party, and I was saying, I just moved to this side of town and I don't know a yoga class that does a long shavasana, because I had a previous teacher who did a really long shavasana at the end of yoga, and I felt like a lot of benefit from it. And he said, I've got a teacher that he's Dutch, his name's Albert, he's an architect, and he's, at the time I think you were in your 70s, and I was like, wow, this is weird, because my uncle Albert, who sponsored my parents to come to Australia from Holland, Dutch, architect, name Albert, and then I got you two to meet after I met you.
Yeah, which was really nice.
Yeah. And and at the time I think he was about 85 when you met him.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So I'm about 80, I'm 86 now.
Yeah, you were about the same age when you met him. And then you also had these other connections, like we realised you both had a daughter called Monique.
Yes,
And the connection, you worked in the same architectural building, and you had all these other connections.
That's right, yes, I forgot about that.
Yeah. And so it felt aligned, and then you have been such a big part of my spiritual path, and my Uncle Albert was probably the first person to put me on that path to a degree.
Oh, right, yeah.
And I remember once you said, I'm just taking over from the other Albert and helping you continue your spiritual journey, and I feel that in my heart. That's why I was meant to be with you. And the first class that I walked into at Crafers Hall, I was like, had different energy shifts each time I went, and I was like, wow, this teacher understands energy.
You make me blush.
And I really want to learn from you as much as I can, because I could tell straight away that you understood a lot about energy.
Well, I hope that is true. So,
and I it took me a while, but I think after about 10 years, I became frequent student. We came together weekly for about 3 years nearly. So 1 year I studied the polarity and all the healing modalities, kinesiology, Traeger that you offer.
Yes, and are you successful with those abilities?
Yeah, well, I've created the holistic massage that I offer, and people have incredible shifts. And I'm always, every time I offer those massages, I do reflect on you because, you know, I learnt so much from you.
Well, your heart is in the right place.
And so I feel incredibly fortunate that I was able to learn all that from you, because it's a benefit that continues on with every massage that I give.
Wow.
And and I would be forever grateful for everything you taught me.
Well, you make me blush now.
And and then I spent a year doing my yoga teacher training with you, which excelled my yoga to a large extent. And then I did a little bit of yoga with a group of other girls that spent a couple of years with you, some of my friends. So we did deep spiritual yoga once a week here together. So this place has got lots of good memories for me.
Yes, yeah, well.
You feeding the kangaroos in the morning.
The pity that they're not here now, right? Otherwise we could put it on there too.
Yeah. So that's a bit of our connection.
Yeah.
And very grateful for us to be together today.
That's nice. Same feeling here.
Yeah. So I'm excited to hear your story from from when you were in Holland and then how you became an Australian citizen, how you became the spiritual leader that you are.
Oh, that just happened by itself.
So fire away.
Yeah, well, you asked the questions and I try to answer.
So your earliest memories were possibly of the war?
Yes. I remember like the day of yesterday when the war broke out, because I was playing in a playground and all the sirens went off. And so we started to run home. And when I ran home, 3 years old, as best as I could, I walked with my head in a swing that was swinging, and kids were still in the swing. It was a big bucket. And you could put 4 kids in. And the corners of the bucket had steel corners. And one of them just hit me in the head here. And that made quite a big hole. And then my mother took me to the doctor. And being in that time, the doctor wasn't home. And so his wife, all she knew what to do was to put mercurochrome straight into the hole, which was painful. And and I still got a sign of that. But so we ran home, and that's when the war began. And if I had known beforehand what it was going to be, I don't know what I would have done. But what do you know when you're 3? Yeah. But you feel the energy of the people, the fear, when you're a kid. And I remember that much. Yeah.
Yeah, and you tell a story of when your dad was hiding under the floorboards.
Oh, that was, a bit later. There was more towards the end of the war, 5 years. And there was hardly any water. So when we had a bath once a week in a bathtub, everybody goes in the same bath water. So the little ones first, and then the older ones, and then the older ones. And And we were sitting there and I was banging on the door. And the Germans were looking for men so they could take them to Germany to work in the quick mines. And so I knew my father was escaping the Germans, and he prepared a place underneath the flooring boards where there was a space for about, half a meter. And but there were 3 other guys that also wanted to come in. And was one, he was late, and I could still hear my mother take the sofa that was sitting over the top of the manhole to go underground, under the floor. And anyhow, he got in while the Germans were knocking on the door. And if they would have found out that my mum was hiding guys, they would have shot her straight off. And I remember her face, so fearful. I never forget. And while we are sitting in the bus, that was interesting. And then they came in and they couldn't find anything. Stamped their rifle butts on the floor. And I heard that sometimes they would shoot through the floor. But anyhow, that didn't happen. Yeah, that was an interesting experience, which I remember as if it was happened yesterday.
Yeah. And I feel like because my Opa also went through the war.
And so you heard stories like that from him?
Yeah, and I recently translated his story from Dutch to English and made a book. And I feel like you needed to be a bit cheeky to survive the war.
Yes.
And I remember the stories that you shared about your uncle, your 2 uncles, and how they survived the war.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that could be a bit of the Dutch personality too.
Oh, is it?
I don't know. But like my Opa, he tried to tackle when they were trying to capture him to go work as well.
Oh, really? And
so he tackled one off of his bike.
Oh, really?
And then he was trying to get the rifle off of him.
Wow.
And then he went mad, he said. And then as he was running off away from him, because he went nuts and he couldn't get his pistol, so he just ran. And he shot at my Opa, but the bullet went just through his pants.
Wow.
And missed him. But then he had to go to prison and then he went to the camps.
Yeah.
He was altogether away from home for 9 months.
Yeah.
And then that was at the end of the war as well. So it was 9 months.
Similar
and then
time.
he got released. They just said, like, he was in the middle of Germany and they said, yep, you can go home. And that was it. No way home, no food, nothing. So he had to make all of his own way home, just from the middle of
But
Germany.
lucky that he got free.
Yeah.
Because the Germans were very fearful at the end. What would happen to them when the war ended and they are lost. Yeah. But anyhow, what my uncle did, he asked whether he could go to have a pee. And they went just through the creek, which was a bit down. And so he walked through the creek with the German behind him. And while he was doing his piddle, he had his hands over his shoulders, grabbed the guy behind him, and over his back, and threw him in the creek, and then ran away and was free.
Yeah, and that's how he survived.
That's how he survived.
Yeah.
And many people survived, similar type things.
Yeah. And then your other uncle, he managed to survive as well by being a bit cheeky as well.
Oh yes, he grabbed an old woman, put his arm around it, and walked off with her. And nobody said, while they were standing in the queue with all the soldiers around, he just walked off and I didn't do anything.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, interesting time.
It really disrupted your childhood, mainly in the way of education, because you had no schooling till you were about 7 or 8.
Yeah.
And that was probably one of the biggest, apart from the relationship between your parents, was stressed by it.
Yeah.
Because they had their trauma from it.
Yeah.
It was also the education, because you lost those early years of education.
Absolutely.
That affected you for the rest of your life.
Oh, definitely. And many other people, other kids growing up at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had big learning problems in school.
Yeah.
And they wanted to send me to a slow learning school. And we went there, and then my parents saw that, I was a bit crazy, many crazy kids with big problems in the school. So finally, I ended up in a trade school. And the minute I started to work with my hands, I sort of got through all the problems.
Great.
Yeah, and I had high marks and became a carpenter after that.
Great.
And then a builder and so on.
Yeah.
And then I went to Australia when I was a bit older.
Yeah, and could you explain your reasons for coming to Australia and how old you were? And
if you got a few hours.
What were the main points, I guess?
Yeah, I was 22 and I couldn't find my feet. In Holland at that point, I was in a drawing office, drawing maps of the city, and it was incredibly boring. And because I wanted to be an architectural draftsman, not a draftsman of maps. And finally I decided to go to Australia. I had a girlfriend at the time, and I told her, and she said, I'll come with you. So she came, and we came to Australia.
Yeah.
Which was interesting. And then I ended up in the public buildings department, in the architect's office, and I found exactly what I wanted in the form of education. And that's where your uncle also lived, worked.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then slowly, few years later, yoga came to Adelaide and was brought to Adelaide by Betty Coleman, and I went to her classes, and we just hit it off, and yoga did so much for me in the form of awakening my spiritual awareness, and Betty Coleman was a real helper in that, and we had, in the change rooms, we had really interesting conversations. Which some other people were also interesting like I was, until she said, hey guys, get out of my dressing room, I want to change.
And that was about 1963, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Which is amazing that you were here sort of in Adelaide when yoga started, because now you find yoga
everywhere.
Every corner.
Yes.
So for you to be present
in one of the first classes in Adelaide. Yeah.
So it's amazing.
But because I did lots of gymnastics in the Netherlands, I took to yoga like a fish to water.
Yeah.
And but then I didn't know about the spiritual side of yoga, and that Betty Coleman sort of, with the talks we had, started to come to life. And from then on, I went whoosh onto the spiritual path, and never sorry and never look back.
Yeah, beautiful. Is that one of the reasons why you always offer to your students to meet at a cafe after yoga? Because we would go to the organic cafe, which anybody that's been to the organic cafe might know Albert.
Yes.
And is that part of the reason why you offer that? Because we've
definitely
had so many beautiful conversations.
Not only do I offer it, I also enjoy it.
Yeah.
And there's nothing more like it with a group of your students to see where they are when they start to talk. And also their feedback, this part of the yoga, I don't like what you teach and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot from my own students in that way.
Yeah.
where they were and their shortcomings and on other levels.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was I love yoga. I love what it's given me. And now that I'm on towards the end of my life, 86, and facing this amazing spiritual opportunity that is slowly dawning, that beyond the physical, nothing really exists. And that's a big statement, but very, very true, other than peace. And so that's where I'm going, so I'm looking forward to it. You want to come?
Yes, please. That's why.
Don't tell your husband.
That's why I feel that in your classes, and when I'll walk in with a few niggles or physically or emotionally a little bit disrupted, and I walk out and I'm in peace every time. I feel like everything's shifted, and that's why I keep coming back.
Oh, I thought it was for me.
Well, also I love conversations, and that it's got this spiritual element, and you really also, like, I always feel challenged, in every class.
I'm glad that
you push each student at their
limit. Yeah.
Their limit. Yeah. And so I haven't ever felt bored in a class.
Yeah.
You keep it interesting.
When you're in life and you're constantly on your limit, you grow fastest.
Yeah.
And that's the payback type thing. But I very much feel that you're on a similar journey as me.
Thank you.
So I'm delighted.
Well, I've had some pretty special mentors, so and I don't know where I would be without them, and that's, the reason why I'm holding.
I talk the same about my teacher.
Yeah. And your main teacher being Swami.
Yeah. Swami Karunanda, yeah.
I'll leave you to say his name, Karun. So, that's probably where we're going to take the next part of our conversation, because he was one of your biggest mentors, wasn't he?
Definitely.
And you explained to me that Betty introduced you.
Yeah, she actually attracted him to Adelaide. And that was the first time I taught a class, because she said, Albert, I've got to pick up that Swami. Can you take over the yoga class? 30 people, never taught. And she said, you can do it. And I did, and it worked. But I was scared. The relaxation was good, because I really, when I put my heart into it. And the students picked that up. So the first time I taught yoga, and after that, I'm still teaching yoga. Right. And as in a memory from Betty, as a beautiful person, that's still there, and who introduced me to Swamiji, Swami Karunanda. And I'm still going strong. And
he, could you tell us a little bit about him? Because I know he lived in India for a long time, and he spent 8 years in a cave. And
8 years in a cave meditating. He was a student of Swami Shivananda, a very good teacher in India. And he said at one point, you go and spend some time in a cave. You're not allowed to see anybody. The people from the ashram will bring you food, but you're not allowed to see the people. And he said, and when you're ready, I'll call you on the inner level, intuitive level. And that was fine, my Swami said. However, 8 years later, he called him out of the cave, his teacher. And then he became a sannyasin. As a Westerner, that's quite something. Walked without a penny India from north to south on bare feet, teaching other people from what he has learned. And so in that cave he became very psychic and very deep experiences on the spiritual realm. And that he slowly started to teach me. But he had to sort of, when I saw him for the first time, he had to sort of break me in. And I said, Swamiji, I want to know this, and this. And he said, Albert, go and meditate. I said, yeah, but tell me first. He said, go and meditate. And I go and meditate in the same room. And meditating with him was amazing, because you sit in meditation for 2 hours and you don't know that, 5 minutes is gone. Anyhow, I finally came in, and then he said, let's have all your questions now. And I said, they're all answered in my meditation. And on that level of meditation, you learn the greatest lessons.
Yeah.
So don't underestimate them. And and so constantly he was teaching me like that. Yeah. While even, later, after I was with him for a bit over a year, he said, Albert, let's go for a walk. And he took me for a walk in the bush where we were living. And he said, just sit. And then he took me into a state of nirvana. And he had the ability to get you to that level of consciousness where you could experience that. And then I became the trees, the grass, the birds, everything. And that is where I learned the oneness of everything that is. Once we get that feeling, the doors open, the doors of heaven. So they start to open for you. And that's how he taught me. A number of times he took me out and allowed me to have that experience. So, yes, no wonder I'm very fond of him.
And you explained how when you started yoga with Betty, that it was this volcano, you described it as a volcano of interest, like bloomed inside of you, like an explosion, and you
it
were full of and then that it was the start of your deeper inner healing, and that then Swami took you to that next level of healing that you needed from the war and from your childhood.
Yes, that still needed to be, because it was still buried.
Yeah.
When I met him, I walked in the room and there he was sitting. And I knew that he knew that I was going to be a student. That bond was there instantly. Mm. And I never looked back on that.
Yeah.
And so that was good. So what was your question?
That he helped you with your healing process from your childhood, because you, as well as the war, you had wounds from your father that needed healing.
Yeah. Well, this was one of the reasons why I left Holland. My father was very strict. No conversations, ever. Very little. And with that spirituality must already have been in me somewhere.
Yeah.
I was dying inside. Mm. And I had some horrible times in my schooling. I couldn't learn. I had the lowest figures in the class, 3 out of 10, 2 out of 10. However, I had 9 out of 10 for gymnastics. That's why I was good in yoga, I suppose. And, I went to lots of gymnastic classes while I was in Holland and when I grew up. So I was really set up for yoga.
Yeah.
And, that was good. But I had some wounds from the war. I saw people being shot in the street, people dying of hunger and falling over because I hadn't had any food for months. Little bit here, little bit there. And so that's what's happening around me. And then, of course, the stresses of the wars, people fighting among themselves, people who were for the Germans, while the Germans were, intruding into the Netherlands. And so all that went on when I was growing up, because I was 3 years when the war broke out.
Yeah.
And they were difficult times. And so it was also part of the drive to get out of Holland, and then went to Australia.
Yeah.
And that's where the learning started. I was lucky to come into the public buildings department, where I was sitting with, it was interesting, they had in one room, we had about 12 people, and they were all migrants from Switzerland, from Germany, from France, everywhere in Europe, all architects and architectural draftsmen in one room. And if you came up with a problem and asked how they would fix it, they say, well, in Switzerland we did it this way, in Italy we did it that way, and you had 10 different answers for the same problem, how to answer it. And then they leave you with that choice of which one you take. And so I grew up with a group of very capable people. And then I grew. And out of that I wanted to get away to grow, and I started to work for a private architect, one of the best architects in Adelaide. And, he taught me a few things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love the story about when you were working in the desert and when you flew over the desert, how...
Yes, yeah.
The connection that you had there.
That was amazing. For my job in the public buildings department. No, later I worked for the weapons research for a little bit. And they flew me over to different places, like, what's it called? It will come to me in a minute. And then one day I flew back actually from where I had to work. And I looked down and saw the Australian desert. And I felt the desert in the plane. And I said, this is my land. This is where I belong. And I felt the Australianness of Australians.
Yeah, the spirit.
The spirit, the essence.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. And we really should learn a lot more from the Aboriginals. They know so much.
Yeah.
The problem is we are not ready to learn the lessons they could teach us.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the Western world, we have been brought up in the wrong way, and instead of learning from them, we push them away.
Yeah.
Very sad.
Yeah.
So I still want to go and spend some time and live with some Aboriginals. So one of the things I still need to cross off.
And you have been to the desert a few times since then, and you felt that.
Yeah. Oh yes.
Connection.
Once I felt it once, I recognized it even when I was walking on the floor. First time I recognized it from the plane, that overall energy. And then of course I was aware, and then walking on the land, it's like, it's amazing.
Yeah, I felt it in a meditation once, that it is a little bit hard to describe in words, but as I was meditating, I could feel the Kundalini rising up my spine, and I had this understanding through the meditation that the Mother Earth is holding that Kundalini energy for us.
Yes.
And I could feel it rising up, and
wonderful.
That's this. And then I could understand the Indigenous, how probably, like you said, there's so much to learn, but like a little grain of sand of understanding of this connection to Mother Earth, because they're the ones that feed our energy, our life force. The Mother Earth feeds us, and I could feel it in that meditation, the Kundalini feeding my energy.
Yeah.
And then I had this understanding that like yourself, I don't know too many Indigenous people to bounce my ideas off, but I have done a bit of research since. But in that moment, I felt like Uluru and the desert is one of the most spiritual places, because the Earth's crust is so small, and it's the closest that you can get to Mother,
to the essence,
to the energy and the essence.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful.
And it's that's why it's so significant, because and then I've done a bit of research about, and I had like, a image of like the belly button, how the belly button is the thinnest part to our inner part of our body.
Yes.
And that's how I could describe it in words, is that like that's like Uluru and the desert. It's like our belly button.
Yes.
Just so thin.
Yeah.
And then the umbilical cord, was where the connection with the mother, feeding our life force when we were in the womb. And and then I have read that is a connection with the Indigenous and Uluru and
great.
Anyway, so I feel the same like energy, that there's a really sacred place, the desert, and there's so much to learn, and I'm hoping to learn more myself.
Great. Raise the Kundalini more and more. The more you do that, the more peace you will have.
But it was just this knowing and a taste of what the desert has to offer.
Desert is a beautiful place. Yeah. I went with my daughter to, what's it called?
Cooper Pedy. Was that?
No. It will come back to me. Yeah. Which was also like the desert, and the peace is just amazing. Just all coming from the land.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love the story, coming back to your Swami, of when he was in the cave, and how when his vibration was so high, the stories of the cave, if you want to take over from there.
Yeah, well.
Of what happened to him when he was in the cave with the birds and the snake.
Yes.
If you can describe how that happens.
Yeah, because of his high energy, the birds would feed him and sow seeds in his lap, and which was how close he was to nature. And he had a snake just came, curled up next to him, and started to bathe in the sunlight of his energy.
Yeah.
So those things happened to him, and great peace. And when I would go to my Swami, and Saturday afternoons we had satsang with him, means a meeting, and but some people, they couldn't even come closer to the Swami than about 100 meters. And I said, Swamiji, what's happening with those people? He said, give them time, they have to get used to the energy. And sort of each time they came a little closer until they came inside.
Yeah.
But that was the energy that you find in the desert. The same energy was within him.
Yeah.
And so life on that level of meditation that you reach is like that.
Yeah.
It's incredibly peaceful and beautiful. And that's why we meditate, to raise that energy.
Yeah.
And then there is a breath which you can do, which I call the peace breath. And so you inhale peace, and as you raise your arms, you raise the Kundalini at the same time, all the way to the crown, at this height. And then you give yourself an ointment of that peace on the exhalation. And again, inhale peace until you reach the wow factor. And then exhale peace. And you cover your body in that peace. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
So literally, each time you inhale, you raise the kundalini to the level where your fingers touch.
Yeah.
And it's a great breath to practice.
Yeah.
And if you practice it and there are questions, feel free to ask.
And did Swami teach you that peace breath, or you?
No, I learned that from somebody. They were
else?
doing it at the beach, I think.
Yeah.
Whether they reached the same frequency, I don't know. But yeah. This movement is well known. Yeah.
And maybe if you want to tell us about when you were living with your Swami here in Bel Air, you moved into where he was living because he was living in a mental hospital, or on the outsides of the mental hospital. He wasn't a patient.
No. That's where I met him. He was staying, and I went to see his place, and that's where I was. And I so much wanted to live with him, and I couldn't work out how. Then the owner of the mentally retarded hospital walked in, he who was also a student of Swamiji. Lucky mad people there. And he said, Swamiji, my cook left, and I got nobody to cook for 30 mentally retarded people, and I can't get anybody. And I said, take me. And he knew me, so he said, fine. I said, but I have to talk to my wife first, whether she's okay with it. Because I have 2 children, and they were young still at that time. But there was a nice school just across the road from there. Anyhow, I talked to my wife and she looked at me. Are you nuts? And I said, no, I'm serious. Please think about it. And of course, he also has met the Swami. And to my surprise, within the hours, he came back, Albert, let's do it. And she did. And I'm always grateful that she said yes. And so we went there and lived there as well. Yeah. It was a little building where we lived. And I said, but to her, that I can't cook for nuts. And she said, I know. And I said, what if I do breakfast and lunch and you cook dinner? She said, that's okay. And that's what we did.
Yeah.
But then the things that happened in the kitchen were amazing. Because you have those people, mentally retarded people, to help you. Because you can't do all the dishes and everything. And her name was Mavis. And she used to run a restaurant of sorts. And she lost it and became nuts as well. That's why she was there as a patient. And she would come and she would pick up a plate in her fingers and say, Mr. Hennink, see what they do to me with my fingers. Look at my fingers. And that's what they do. And the place went bang on the floor. Oh. And she picked up another one and she said, Mr. Hennink, look, yeah, did you see? I said, I took the plate out of her hand and said, you go for a walk outside and come back when you want. And those type of things happened. Yeah. Similar things everywhere in everyday sort of life with those people. Mm. But when you love them, then you start to understand they're also humans. And I got along with them really fine. And it was better people than sometimes the people from the office where you work.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So it was a good learning experience. In
It
that
was
way
really,
too.
really good. Yeah. And sometimes I would make breakfast or whatever, and they say, Mr. Hennink, and I slide a plate forward. This is not fit for the pigs, Mr. Hennink. I said, oh, I'm sorry. What do you want? And I'll give him what I want and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, the food was perfectly fine. All sort of things happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, in hindsight, I'm glad I worked there
Yeah.
because it does a lot for the ego.
Yeah.
If you have an ego, that soon can diminish to nothing. And then you're free.
Yeah. So that it was a very healing time for you.
Yes, healing and learning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then from
And then in between time, because after lunch I was free, I would go and sit with the Swami or meditate or do whatever we do.
Yeah. And then soon you felt after that period that you were able to hold space for other people, and you started doing more teaching.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I left after, don't know, 2 years I think it was. And I started to teach yoga, and that grew.
Yeah.
Well, Betty Coleman was there, and I was still teaching for her.
Yeah.
And then she would leave me with a class, and she would go back to Melbourne and Sydney, where she came from. By the way, and this is funny, she ran a pub in Adelaide and a hotel. I'm trying to think of the name. A hotel she built from the ground up on the highway somewhere. And I was running the school sometimes for her. But she was the nicest person you could think of.
Mm.
She had the money, and if somebody needed money, she was always ready to give. So she was walking the spiritual path, even though she ran the pubs. But that was finances coming in, which you could spend to help so many other people.
Yeah.
If you don't run the pub, you don't have the money.
Yeah. Yeah.
But she was... her husband sometimes just shook his shoulders a bit.
And then you joined a spiritual group, the spiritual movement.
The movement of spiritual inner awareness, meditation group. Once a week we'd come together. The one was on Friday night, every Friday night. And we would meditate and discuss. And this was run by an American guy called John Roger. And that was called the Movement of Spiritual Inner Awareness. Mm-hmm. So that helped me to become more and more aware on the inner levels.
Yeah.
And but I was a member of that right through and before I met the Swami.
Yeah.
So that was very good.
And then you started your own yoga studio.
Yeah.
In roughly 1966.
Yeah,
in
something
Adelaide.
like that. Yeah. And that was good, and that grew, and that was nice.
What was it called again?
The Holistic Learning Center.
Yeah. And could you explain how it run, and then all the learning that you managed to do there, like the polarity that...
Yes, we learned.
That you taught me.
In the process, yes. I learned actually from Bruce Gibson. He was very good, very soft. And he taught me in the end massage, polarity balance, trigger, different things within those type of treatments.
And that was because you said the yoga studio had 2 large rooms, so there would be coinciding yoga classes with 40...
Oh, that was in the big center we had. Yeah,
40 students, and then you had 5 therapy rooms, and you would offer some of those healing treatments, and then you ran some of those courses.
And it grew, and we hired a big, 2 big halls that were within one complex with 5 natural therapy rooms.
Beautiful.
And 2 yoga rooms.
Yeah.
So we had 2 yoga classes going on at once.
Yeah.
And I would also teach yoga teacher training courses.
Yeah.
And we would have 40 people in a class sometimes.
Yeah, beautiful.
But the main essence was about 20 people in the natural therapy classes. Yeah.
And then with that money, you travelled to India a lot and to help your spiritual path.
I had the opportunity, from the money we earned, that I could go to India for 2 months every year.
Yeah, and then your children were older then too.
Yeah. So that was all worked nicely.
Yeah.
And and I learned heaps in India, good and bad things.
And you went on Osho's retreats. And had lots of different experiences.
That was a circus.
Yeah.
That's an understatement. But good, you learn other things. I went there for my eyes, to improve my eyesight. And that was great. We had, that was good. Food was amazing. And the people were interesting, to say the least. All sorts of levels, all sort of hippies.
And you met a few different teachers, I'm guessing, that helped you on your path as well.
Yeah. Well, what's his name? Who ran the place? Oh, can't think of.
One of the ashrams?
No, the one where I went. With
Osho.
Osho. Yeah. And he would lecture.
Yeah.
And interesting lectures, because he would come, we would be dancing, in a hall of over 1,000 people it could hold. And we would dance, and the drummers in the band were world's best. And we would dance until, wow, amazing. And then he walk in, silence. Everybody would go and kneel, and then we would sit. He would give a lecture, and the way he would talk was interesting, because he would pause after some words. So when you would pause and you're hanging on for the next word, you come into a meditative state, when it's interesting. And that's how he would teach. And then he would finish teaching, and then you could hear those great drummer, boom, 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 and then it would start. And off we danced again.
Yeah.
And then it stops, and everybody needles, and that was a great place.
Yeah.
I never ever forget that. But that's what you do when you go to India. You come into all sorts of places. Yeah. And now I'm here with you.
And you learn a lot about energy work as well.
Yeah.
And
in the form, I learned a lot. My teacher was a good teacher, Bruce Gibson, and he had, beautiful energy. When he put his hands on you, it's like an ointment of peace. And so that is a lesson in itself.
Yeah.
To have that energy when you heal others.
Yeah. And to feel it, it's like he's giving you a taste of your potential.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when you do that, you grow fast.
Yeah.
So
and
it's what you are doing as well.
Yeah.
Because, you will have a great future.
Thank you.
It's already happening.
Yeah. Well, my life has changed a lot
Yeah, I bet.
over the last few years with your support and other people's support in my community.
Thank you.
And the dreams that I've always had are coming to fruition.
Do you feel greater peace is coming?
Yeah, because, it's not... My Uncle Albert always said, I never worked a day in my life.
Yes.
He always used to say that. And
He's so right.
And that's how I feel. It's like I'm coming to a point where it's not work anymore.
No, it's no effort anymore.
Yeah.
Your body gets tired.
Yeah.
So?
I love every minute of what I'm offering, being of service.
Yeah.
Making people feel better, giving them, that essence of you are more than this body. You
bet, and that will get stronger and stronger, and then the doors of heaven start to open, and then you find, hey, heaven is everywhere.
Yeah.
Right here, right there, everywhere.
Yeah.
And then you live in it, and then you start to live in it, and the consequences is that you grow twice as fast. Yeah. And it's a beautiful journey.
Yeah.
Where you are from now on, it gets more and more beautiful. And you're well on your journey.
And some of the challenges that I feel that for a lot of people, that relationships are one of the biggest challenges in their life. Intimate relationships, you know, and you had a few
intimate relationships. What do you think? I'm 85.
So over that time you did separate from your wife that you had 2 children with.
Yeah.
And maybe you want to share a little bit what you've learnt through that relationship. And
I learned that
others.
I had the right wife, the right person I married in the first place, but I didn't know that. That said, the world on the other side was a lot better, I thought, in some ways.
The grass is greener on the other side.
That's it, what I'm looking for, Yes, and that's what I learned. And what I've learned in life, put all together, is becoming such a beautiful place to be that I'm glad I've done all the hard work for it. It's coming, it's there partially. Yeah. And that's where I am at the moment. And every minute becomes beautiful. Yeah. And so let's not waste these moments of opportunity to have great peace. It's only a veil, very thin veil, that stands between you and that greater life. Yeah, life is amazing, absolutely amazing.
And I guess the last part of that spiritual path, because you ran that centre for 4 years, you were saying, and then, of course, life happened. You had another...
First of all, I sold it to someone, and I didn't know how to run it, and I went broke within a year and a half. Unfortunately. Never mind. But I had another relationship.
Yeah, you had another relationship, and you had Oscar, and
and he's a beautiful spiritual soul. He doesn't know it yet, but it's definitely there.
And you were 60 when...
Yeah, something like that.
And you're never too old to have children. It's amazing.
If you stay young.
Young and fit.
Keep doing your yoga postures.
And young in mind.
Oh, yeah. I feel I'm getting younger as I grow older.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to that point where you lose your body, but you blend into that greater, beautiful place that's there. And you keep meditating, keep doing your yoga, keep understanding life, and keep loving others with a full, open, loving heart. And life becomes wonderful. It's that simple, and it's that hard at the same time, because we're still hanging on to, I need to look after me. So, who do you think you are?
And I don't know if there's something else you want to share, but in between what happened, but for about the last 20 years you've been teaching at Crafers Hall.
Yeah.
And I've been there.
Yeah, go on.
I've been there for about 15 years, on and off.
Oh, has it been that long? Yeah.
And what I loved is how consistent you are. You did 4 classes up until this year.
Yeah.
And even public holidays, you just are there all the time. And always holding space. And the students that you attract, there's not like hundreds of students, but the students that you attract, they're amazing students on the heart
over
level.
the years.
And deep spiritual students.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that.
When you become a spiritual person, spiritually aware means you're aware of the subtler levels of life. And they're beautiful. And you can't help but also carry that beauty with you. And then it's no effort.
Yeah.
Like you look after your kids with greater love, I can see. Every time, I meet you again. Mm-hmm. And you're growing too.
Yeah.
And it's no effort, you just live. And that is part of your life.
Yeah.
Sharing the peace and the beauty that is the reality of life.
Yeah.
There is no shit in life. It's just that you interpret it that way sometimes.
Yeah.
I know, I did it too.
We like to cling on to our stories.
Yeah.
And believe our stories to be real.
Yeah.
Because we're following our mind and not our heart. So we need to keep coming back to our heart, coming back to love.
Wise words.
Not follow the tricky monkey mind.
So how often do you lose that?
Quite a lot.
Oh, well.
But
I can see.
There's longer periods.
Yes.
And the more, I feel like if you're more consistent with yoga and meditation.
The base of your life is getting richer and richer.
Yeah. And
but the shit is still around sometimes. So what?
Yeah. And it's more like also I've got the tools to know how to come back.
That's a great ability.
So I might get pulled.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, go into nature, do some yoga, meditate.
And that is your greatest learning curve.
Come back to the heart.
Yeah, always.
Yeah.
Always. And also come back to the peace.
And even sometimes I'm like, I know I'm following my monkey mind here and I still choose to do it, which is even worse in a way because I'm not ignorant. I'm not ignorant to my own behaviour.
Well, but then you must have a lot of fun if you can laugh about it.
Well, it's the ego wanting to be right, isn't it?
Absolutely, always, yeah.
The ego wants to be right, and sometimes
so if you lose
too
the ego,
tempting to follow it sometimes.
Yes, I know. But, make fun out of it.
Yeah.
If you can make fun out of it, you have a good time all the time.
Yeah. Well, I laugh because I'm still learning. It's the life lesson of Earth School.
Yeah. But can you realize that you, in this point in time, you're in a very steep learning curve.
Yeah.
And so the learning curve makes life a little bit harder when it's steeper. But the benefits are amazing.
Yeah.
And life just totally and utterly changes. The way you see it, the way you feel it, the way you're standing in it. Yeah. And then you go beyond all the bad parts and you don't carry those on your shoulders anymore. Life is the way it is at the point.
Yeah.
I think you're a great girl. I really appreciate you as a friend.
Yeah, and I appreciate the seeds that you've planted for me.
Thank you.
You've helped me to flower, and we spent a whole year when I learnt all those healing modalities. One week me on the table, and it was hard. It was painful. There was many ego deaths. But you were so patient in holding space for us, and
it's my pleasure.
For us to give us an opportunity to heal and grow.
Yeah.
So many profound things over those years,
But as you
Too
grow...
many moments to mention.
Yes.
you know.
But as you grow and you are, the more beautiful life becomes and all the shit falls away.
Yeah. And coming to that is a question that I would like to ask. What is your big vision for humanity and the world as a whole? What would your ideal vision be?
That's $1 million question.
And how do you think it would be possible?
Yeah, it is because overall more and more spiritual groups are rising up, and so we're growing spiritually. And that's how it is. And if he balls it up, then we have to deal with that as well. But grow on top of that eventually. When you see the beauty at your deepest meditation, when you experience that, that's what it can be like all the time, in the midst of all the chaos. Hold on to that and be that, and life changes. Then every obstacle becomes peanuts. Easy. And when your meditations get deeper, you vibrate more and more on that higher level. Higher level meaning higher vibration where you live. And it's incredible.
And that's where you see humanity moving towards? There
is no other place they can move.
Yeah.
Because they can't go any lower.
Yeah, and you often speak of how no matter who we are, we're all on the evolution path, because if you don't learn the lessons this life, you'll learn them next. And it's like some people just grow a bit slower because they have to learn them in another lifetime, and that takes a lot longer. Yeah. So exactly. It's best to learn it in this lifetime. Yeah. And you've shared that with me. So
but it's also good to just learn.
Yeah.
Wherever your consciousness is, learn what you feel you need to learn. Yeah. And then you grow.
Yeah.
But endeavor to make it as beautiful as you can.
Yeah.
Because then you're having fun and peace at the same time.
Yeah.
And what more is there? Fun and peace together? Yeah.
Is there anything else that you would like to share with people?
Yes. The thing is, when I have a deeper spiritual experience, how can you share that in words? The words aren't for it here yet. But meditate, raise the Kundalini as often as you can. You can do it with your breath. Inhale peace. Until the feeling goes, wow, this is good. Exhale peace. And be in that state of peace as often as you can. And don't get shitty if you're not there. When you get really shitty, hey, there's a great opportunity for learning here. How can I work through this best?
Yeah. And we'll make a few videos for clear instructions on posture and raising your Kundalini and the peace breath routine, because you've got a little routine.
If you like. Yeah.
We'll make a couple of little videos for people so they can practice at home, and if they want to practice with you, and they live in Adelaide. They're fortunate like me to live in Adelaide. They could come to Crafers Hall.
Yeah.
Albert used to teach 4 days a week, but now Friday nights and Saturday morning. So Friday nights it's 6:15, and then Saturday
10 o'clock on Saturday, a.m. Yeah.
10 a.m. on Saturdays.
Yeah.
So.
And I'm thinking of putting another class, opening a third class.
Yeah.
So I go back to being busy again. But I'm also thinking is that why don't we set up something on a website? Maybe we can do it together.
Yeah.
And then that can be the road into, where we are working, where we are growing, where we are having fun.
Yeah.
To other people.
Yeah.
And then we make it at least Australia-wide.
Yeah.
And then we'll work out a way where we can, once a year or twice a year, people can come over and we have a great party.
Sounds amazing.
Spiritual party.
Yep. So at 86, no thoughts of slowing down, hey?
Oh. If I leave this body is when I leave this body. Yeah. At this point in time, it's functioning, it's fine, and I haven't gone cuckoo yet. And maybe I have, I don't know. You're the better judge.
Well, thank you so much for
it's entirely my pleasure.
Sharing your wisdom and your spiritual path.
Anytime.
And, I feel so blessed, and
so am I for this.
Yeah.
Because, you've got a hand in me as well.
Yeah.
By doing what you're doing and what you have done and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's good. We're both learning.
Yeah. And I just wanted to show this picture.
Oh, my teacher.
Of your teacher. And how I haven't ever met him, obviously. But I can feel the deep love and compassion and softness in his eyes. He has the most beautiful, deep eyes.
His name is Karunanda, and that means peace.
Wow.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
He's nice. Okay.
Thank you.
But his journey was, in hindsight, fantastic. But when you take snippets out of it, they were hard times sometimes.
Yeah.
So you either kill yourself or you stick with it. And if you kill yourself, you have to come back and do it again. Then maybe in a worse situation. So we're just lucky that we can talk about what we are deeper within us. And there is joy, and because of the joy, we want everybody to have that as well.
Yeah. And without the spiritual journey that you took, like we've shared stories how you said other people from your family that were affected by the war, they tried to come to Australia because they were feeling unsettled and couldn't move past the war, but they continued to feel that unsettledness here, and then they went back to Holland.
Exactly.
But the spiritual journey is what helped heal you.
Definitely.
And without that, who knows where you'll be.
There was almost no other choice.
Yeah, it was that, or kill yourself, or take drugs.
Or get a bad life, or go there. Yeah. Don't do that. So, there's no point in it.
So it helps with the inner work, looking inward, healing, so you can live a much better life.
Exactly.
And not live a toxic life.
When there is
or
peace.
end it and then come back, like you said, in another life.
But see, it takes too long coming back each time.
Yeah.
So even just listening to this and listening to spiritual talks by others makes you grow.
Yeah.
You stop and think and say, wow, I can be on a journey which is truly, truly better than any intoxicating drug.
Yeah. Yeah.
True. It's yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
My pleasure.